listening to 91 Reasons, a journey into the twisted landscape of pop culture. Keep your hands and arms inside the podcast at all times. And now, the voice, Jeff Tucker.
All right, so this is it. We've made it. We have made it to senior year. And just like it was back then, I'm so excited to be at the final chapter of this. Like, can we just get this over with and I can begin my easy life? If I could just graduate, everything would be fine, right? I'd be a millionaire by the time I was 19 and things would be great. It doesn't work out that way. But everyone you're going into senior year, everyone has this electric energy. Like, I made it. I'm here. I didn't think this day would ever come. And even more so for those of us who went to Norwalk, because we started at 8th grade. So we had an extra year at that place. Most people started as a freshman. We didn't have, or even a sophomore. Like, I know some middle schools go through 9th grade, but we didn't have any of that. We went from elementary, boom, to high school. Welcome to high school. So 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 5 years of high school, which if you said to a regular person, they'd go, did you flunk a grade? No, I went to Norwalk, where we had 5 years of high school. And I knew going in, I was very cocky. I was a cocky SOB. But I had to be, because when you're as short as I am, you have to have other defense mechanisms. So my defense mechanism was I was cocky, and a lot of people hated me, and I didn't care about that. I still don't care about that. But I'm not cocky now in the sense that I'm the greatest. I'm cocky now in the sense that I care more about the project than I do about myself or anybody else. I'm singularly focused, and I think that has to do with slightly having Asperger's, in that I can see the project finish, and I just want to get there, and anybody that slows us down needs to be thrown out the car. You know what I mean? Who's the crazy one? I'm the crazy one. You're the crazy one. I'm not crazy. You're crazy, right? But back then, it was more ego. Less so now. I mean, if you talk to people, they would say, oh, that guy's got a terrible, massive ego. But I had it back then. I've mellowed. Everybody mellows with age. Some people get worse, like celebrities and such. I'm not like that. I'm actually, in my real life, I'm actually very quiet. I like to just sit and stare at the wall. People assume that I'm on 24 hours a day, and I'm not. This is a persona you can turn on and off, My wife is told that. She goes, hey, we're going to a party. Can you just be Jeff and not Jeff? And I'm like, oh, okay. I think I kind of understand what that means. So anyways, high school, senior year, Norwalk High, class of 1989, doing fine at 89. It was going to be my chance finally to walk through Senior Square without getting thrown into a trash can, which I had been thrown into a trash can once or twice. Not my finest moments. But you take your lumps in high school. Everybody does. Some people don't. I don't know. Everyone's fighting a war you don't see, right? You've heard that expression. It couldn't be truer than in high school, that everybody is seriously fighting. You don't know what is going on in people's home life. You know that this what persona they've created. Think of high school as the Matrix, where everybody puts on their best face. We don't know what's going on back in the real world they call home. I've talked about on this show, my home life was insane. I was living with Don Berg, a guy who every day thought of new ways to scream and yell at me. Even though I was getting straight A's, it wasn't good enough. I was a terrible person, a terrible student. I was not good enough, and I never really understood that. And I've talked about it on the other show where this is why people snap, because in your head, you're doing everything right, and you're still getting crap flung at you, and you're like, well, should I rebel? Because if I'm not getting the result I want doing the right thing, maybe I'll get the result I want doing the wrong thing. You know what I mean? I never got to that point. I never let Berg break me like that. But he was a huge presence in my life. Not so much senior year, because by this time I had learned to drive. Beyond that, I had friends with cars, and I know that kids today won't believe me because they have the internet and they can sit at a desk and go anywhere. But for a 1988, 89 kid, which is, senior year, having access to a car in any way, shape, or form meant freedom and getting out. And there were times that me and my friends would get in a car and just drive. It didn't matter what the destination was. We just drove. Gas was 75 cents a gallon. Who cares, right? So in order to explain senior year, we have to go back a little. And let's go back to junior year, where I had tried my hand at writing a play. I wrote a one act that was pretty well received, and we took it to competition. I talked about it on the last show, but I had bigger dreams. So I sat and I started writing what I thought was going to be a 2-act play, and we had these advisors in the drama department that the teacher had brought in, Tim and Dave, really amazing guys that had more of an influence on me than I think they even know. I've ran into Dave a few times at conventions. He's a very talented artist, and Tim I see on Facebook. Two amazing guys that really influenced me. And I let them read it, and Tim looked at me and said, "It's a great play, Jeff, but it doesn't end. It just sort of stops." I said, "Well, yeah, that's the act 2. He goes, "It needs a 3rd act to finish it." And I was like, "It does?" Because I thought the reporter wrapped it up at the end. He goes, "That's not good drama, dude. You got all the characters into trouble, and then you get them out of trouble in a second? No, it needs a 3rd act." So I hadn't thought about that because, writing is a very time-consuming, soul-crushing experience. You're alone, you write, and you read it, and you hate it, and then you go away, and you come back, and you read it, and you like it. It's a love-hate relationship. So I knew that I had to plug in a 3rd act because I was going to approach the teacher, Maggie, about doing this play in lieu of a regular production. Let's do a homegrown production. And she was very candid with me. She says, nobody's ever written a play as a student here. No one's ever taken that task on. I said, give me the summer to write this thing and let me see what I come up with. So I was going to spend the summer writing this play. But I was also at an age where I needed a job. So my mother got me a job. It's funny. My mommy got me a job. But she did. I didn't have to do anything except show up to get the job. Because it was through a program. My mother found this job program for teens called the United Cambodian Community. And it was this little office right past Norwalk Square. And it was a really nice guy. I don't remember his name, but of course he was Cambodian, and everybody in the office was Cambodian, and he was there to get Cambodian teenagers summer jobs. And I don't know what, maybe my mother worked at Trojan Finance in Norwalk Square, which is right opposite the clock tower in there, right down from Video Depot. So I don't know what my mom was thinking other than, the kid needs a job, and I know that maybe he came into the finance company is what I was going to say. I don't know. All I know is I met this really nice guy, and he's sitting at his desk, and he's having a smoke, because that's what you did back then. I know, you'd imagine going into an office building and everybody's lighting up. I mean, that's simply the way life was back then. And he tells me he's got a job for me. I was like, okay, I'll take a job, sure. So I ended up working at the employment office in Norwalk. And when people ask me, I said, yeah, I work at the unemployment office. They go, you're unemployed? No. Let me rephrase that. I work at the employment office. Everybody calls it the unemployment office, but it's actually called EDD, the Employment Development Department. And it's designed to get you a job, get you on your feet, off the dole and get a job. And I remember going there and like, this is bizarre. What am I doing here? Most kids my age were flipping burgers. They were at the mall selling clothes, any number of, traditional teenage jobs. And instead, I am at the employment office. I am 16. Nobody in there is under 40. And I just remember they're like, oh, welcome. You're going to work in the stock room. Okay, I'm going to work in the stock room. So I see all the people out there lined up to, apply for unemployment. Back then you had to go to the office. You had to do a million things to get unemployment benefits. And then once you were in the system, I think you could do it over the phone eventually. Now it's all done, of course, online. But you had to go to the office. The line was never ending and it lasted all day. And I remember going out there like all these people, I don't know what the economy was like. In 89, I was too young to pay attention to that. But there were a lot of people at the employment office every day. But my job was the stock room. So they take me to the stock room, and it's a big stock room, and it's just crammed with stuff. So they said your job is to organize it, and when things are out, to talk to somebody about reordering things. So, okay. I spent the summer in the stock room of the employment office, which basically meant that after a week, the stock room was clean. I'm a pretty, organized guy when I want to be, when I'm getting paid to be, and I did all the work. And I remember there was a little chair in the back and a little table. So I would just hang out in the stock room, sit there for a while, occasionally stand up, move some pins around, stack some things, and it was a bizarre job. But during my quote-unquote lunch break, my break from my break, I would go in the break room, I would bring a sack lunch, and I would work on this play that I was writing and fixing acts 1 and 2 and adding a third act, which was no easy feat. You're talking about well over 100 pages, which for a guy like me, starting out as a writer, was a lot of pages. My one act was like 25 pages. So I would sit there and I would work on it. And there were a lot of people at the employment office that would ask me, what are you working on? And I just became sort of like this, I don't want to say fixture, that's not the right word, this spectacle at the employment office, because they weren't used to having a kid there of any kind. They weren't used to a kid sitting there writing. I don't know what they were used to kids doing, but certainly not writing a play. And it was a weird summer. And when the summer came to a close, 2 things happened. I had a full 3-act play because I worked my butt off. And I had this group of people who didn't want me to go. And were sad that there wasn't money in the budget to keep me. And think about that, man. I could have been at the employment office for the rest of my life if that had worked out. I mean, who turns down a lucrative government job like that where you can't get fired, right? You do whatever you want. I've seen some government jobs. It's unbelievable, But here's the thing. I wasn't cut out for that. I have other goals, and the goals I have are not only are they esoterical, but they're really hard to achieve. So you have to really work at it. Writing is not easy. Writing a book is not easy. Publishing and editing a book is the hardest thing I've ever done. So I marched into school that year ready to go. And I had a 3-act play called Business as Usual under my arm. And I had a lot of dreams. And I only had a few months to do it because school was ending. And I was eager to get out of school, because I wanted my life to begin. I'd had enough of Norwalk High. I had achieved, other than the play thing, I had achieved everything I needed to achieve. Well, other than the play thing and ever going on a date of any substantial, merit. It didn't happen. It just didn't happen. But, a lot of people are like that. A lot of people don't. They're focused on grades and they don't get into social stuff until college, But even at college, I was a terrible. I had the dates in college were awful. But anyways, we're at the doorstep of senior year, right? And I'm hanging out with a good group of friends. all these guys that lived at the Taco the Town trailer park. And senior year was the first day of school that I felt ready. You know, there was a certain cockiness to junior year, but senior year you're a little more mellow because this is it. You tell yourself you're not going to get any more of these. This is the last first day of school. You're a senior. You've made it. It's time to wrap this up. It really is time to wrap this up. But then we had a wrench thrown at us, and the wrench was my friends John and Dave and Joe and Rich and Eric and all these other guys that we hung out together. We thought it would last forever. But, things don't. And the first big wrench we got thrown at us was our friend Randy, who had graduated the year before, decided to join the Army. And that didn't seem real to us until it was real to us. And the morning we had to say goodbye to Randy. We got up really early that day because the car that was taking Randy to the airport, driven by his recruitment officer, scheduled to be there at like 7 a.m., 7:15 a.m. So we all, we tore out of bed. For me, it was quite a drive because I didn't live at the trailer park. Everybody else was near or in the park. And we're all standing there talking to Randy, and there was a moment where you don't really process that this is happening. And then a car pulls up, and a guy gets out, and he's there to take Randy. And Randy's got his bag ready to go, and there's two other recruits already in the car who look scared to death. And everybody's crying. And we said goodbye to Randy, and we watched Randy in that moment. We watched him grow up, and we watched him get in that car. I mean, Randy was a big dude, but he had a big heart. And we watched him drive away. And the last thing the recruitment guy said to us was, "There's room in the car for anybody else that wants to go." And we're like, no, I'm not cut out for the Army. Maybe somebody else is, but I'm good, thanks. We watched Randy go. And that was a real bittersweet moment. That was a moment of, hey, the band's breaking up. It's going to be a slow breakup over the school year, but the band is indeed breaking up. So school starts, and I present the play to my teacher, and she gave us the green light, and that became the biggest project I'd ever worked on at that point, where I had to help design the sets and the lighting, and we had to cast it. And I argued with the teacher because I wanted to play the straight man instead of the goofy sidekick. And that was, there are moments in your life where you learn a lot about yourself. And the teacher telling me, "Jeff, you're not the romantic lead. You're the goofy sidekick." And I guess you could get upset at that, but I didn't really, because I had a thing. This is my thing. I'm the goofy sidekick. I'm okay with that. I'm never going to be the leading man. I'm not tall enough. I'm not good looking enough, but I have a spot in the play, in life, in whatever. Okay, I'm good with that. I'm not Gaston. I'm Le Fleur, the little guy that hangs out with Gaston. And you know what? Somebody's got to play that part. And it wasn't until years later, decades later, that I was working at Disneyland as the mayor of Frontierland, and they brought in a new guy, and he was Prince Charming. That he had played the part of Prince Charming. He was tall. He was incredibly good. He looked like a Ken doll come to life, and he was training to be another mayor of Frontierland, like I was. Because it was a part anybody could play if you were funny enough, and he was a funny guy. But I remember going to lunch with him and him saying to me, "Jeff, I envy you because you get to have all the fun on stage. I'm always Prince Charming. I'm always this stoic hero guy who gets the girl, but I never have any fun." I was like, that's a weird way of looking at it. I'd always been happy with my station. I've never been a guy upset about my height or my looks. I am who I am. I don't have that gene that says, look in the mirror and get upset. Oh my God, if I did, I would never leave the house, ladies and gentlemen. So we cast the play, and we did the rehearsal process, and it was tough because the whole time we're doing it, you start second guessing and doubting yourself, the dialogue, the moments here, because you're not just reading off the page. I'm reading off a page that I typed up. These are my words. This is my play. And when we finally got to opening night, it was very surreal, very surreal. Watching the play unfold and hearing the crowd laugh and understand the plot and taking that bow at the end, it was surreal, just so amazing. Like the first real triumph I had ever had as a person. This isn't winning the spelling bee. This isn't, I won the science fair, for God's sake, whatever. This was something I had created out of thin air, and now we were entertaining over 100 people a night. It was fantastic. And I got off the stage that night, and not only were my mom was there, and of course Berg was there, but the people from the employment office were there, and they just applauded and said, we wanted to see what you'd been working on all summer, and it was amazing. And I felt like an adult at that point. People from my work had come to see me, do a play. That's so awesome, right? Especially because at the time I was only 17. So the other people that showed up I was in this program called K.I.T. It started out called MGM, Mentally Gifted Minors, which became obviously Mentally Gifted Morons, and then K.I.T., which was Gifted and Talented Education. So I used to go to this other elementary school, every 3 or 4 months for a week. And I hadn't seen those folks since 7th grade. And they showed up to the play. And I just was like, oh my God, the K.I.T. teachers are here. And they wanted to check in and see. And they said, we knew you would do something. We didn't know it would be this big. And I guess, when you're inside something, you don't see how big it is. It's the people outside looking in that tell you you're into something big. And that felt great. And where else could the year go but down after that? I mean, it was a big triumph to present a 3-act play like that I had written, and it really put in me this writing bug, and more importantly than the writing bug is the writing bug to complete a project, because a lot of people will tell you they write, but very few people will tell you that they wrote something and actually finished it. And that's tough, because I've got 100 projects that I've started and never finished. Over 100. It's easy to start something. It's very difficult to finish. So the school year commenced, and I hung out with my friends, and there were love triangles and broken hearts, and my friend Joe and I would hang out on the weekends, and he would get blind stinking drunk. I never drank, so I didn't understand it, but I've never begrudged anybody a drink. It seemed okay with me. And we would drive to Hollywood and back, and some people drifted off. I know, like my friend Dave didn't want to go to school. Joe didn't want to go to school. I had to drive. I needed to get to school. There were teachers there that I admired, that I wanted to impress. I was finishing up plastics class. I took plastics class with Mr. Crab. I think I talked about it in the last show. He never really understood me, but he begrudgingly knew that I was doing good work, even if it wasn't the work he wanted. He was a good teacher in that way, because there were a lot of teachers that if you didn't do it their way, they just jettisoned you. By senior year, I had completed most of the courses I needed to take. I was done with math at that point. I was done with PE, and I had a bunch of electives, drama, and whatever you take civics class. I had a science class with a guy named Mr. Taylor. He was a pretty good teacher, and he was stuck over in these, every school has these temporary trailers out back that some become, permanent. And he got moved into this permanent wing out in the back That was, when I was there, it was the new wing. And it was a pretty nice class. It had air conditioning. It was great. And Mr. Taylor was a really good science teacher. He would put things in a way that you could understand them. And by the time senior year had rolled around, I grasped all the concepts that they were trying to teach us. I was not a dumb kid by any stretch. I had been in all the accelerated programs. And senior year was not, I wouldn't say it was a coast. Because I was doing so well academically, most of my problems were socially with my friends, A new girl moved into the trailer park across from John, and of course everybody she was the Darla of the Little Rascals gang, and Spanky and Alfalfa both wanted to date her, and somebody had to win out and somebody had to lose, and that's the way it goes. And I remember everybody had to come up with a plan. Like, what are you going to do after school? What are you going to do? Are you going to college? And for me, I wasn't going to go to college. I was going to take a pretty long time off and decide whether I wanted to go to college or not, which seems odd because I was doing so well and I probably could have gotten in any college that I wanted. But first off, we had no money. My family was, we were broke. We were lower middle class by this point. And I don't know how I was going to pay for college. I'm sure there were some grants I could have applied for. But I'd taken so many weird classes that you get that feeling that you're just done with education for right now. Maybe you'll pick it up later, but at this point we're just done. I don't remember if I talked about taking bowling classes with what was that Terry Van Gorder? Remember Mr. Van Gorder? He was the PE teacher, and he taught a bowling class at Keystone Lanes, and you had to be there at 7 a.m. So me and this guy Toby, one of my great friends from school that I still talk to, we would get up every morning 6:15, 6:20, and Toby's dad would pick me up, and we would drive over to Keystone Lanes, and we would bowl for an hour in bowling class. It cost extra to do it. It was not cheap. And I remember it was me and Toby and this guy and one of my other good friends, Terry. I've talked about Terry on the show before. Really cool guy. Football player, good looking. Never could understand what he was hanging out with me for, but I didn't because girls were attracted to Terry. I didn't argue, but we ended up winning the bowling competition because Terry had figured out a way to cheat using the handicaps. And I remember at the big ceremony at the end of the year, Van Gorder presented us with a trophy and said, "I know you guys cheated. I know you don't deserve this, but I have to give it to you anyways." And we were Terry and I are celebrating. Woo, and Toby, woo, we made it. We did it. And I was like, I know we cheated, but we still won. Like, we cheated at bowling. Who's the loser there? Like, who cares? Oh my God. We cheated at Van Gorder's bowling class. And because we had bowling, we didn't have a first period. So Toby and I weren't due to school until 10 or 10:30. So we would bop in at 10:30, show our pass at the gate. Remember, you had to have a pass to get in. And we'd have lunch there and hang out and finish the day off, It was, what can I equate it to? Like senior living in Florida, where people are still living and doing all the things that people do, but there's not a lot of responsibility. Senior is in the title, right? Senior living. So we were seniors at Norwalk, and we were just bopping through the year, hoping to just survive it and get to it. And then something big happened. And the big thing that happened was a little movie called Batman. And it's hard to describe today, like the mania that surrounded this film. I know movies are big these days. Movies come out and they make $1 billion, but they don't seep into every crevice of pop culture the way a tentpole movie like Batman did in 1989. Everybody was talking about it. We had to see this movie at all costs. Michael Keaton, the dopey guy from Mr. Mom, was going to be Batman. What? Jack Nicholson was going to be the Joker. That was the part we were most excited about. Tim Burton, the guy who did Beetlejuice, was going to direct. and all that mattered. Now, I'm talking about, this is still Christmas, 88. And the movie doesn't come out till June, but we were like shaking to see it. You know, when they finally debuted a trailer, we watched it. The trailer was on a tape of a movie called Everybody's All-American with Dennis Quaid. And we would rent that tape just to get the trailer and just study it. You know, my friend John, his dad owned Multi-Video on Rosecrans and Woodruff. And we would rent movies there and hang out. And we all used to bug John about getting a job there, but John didn't want any of his friends working there, because if they crapped out, you know, fairly so, the burden would be on John. And then I applied for it, and one day I was at the counter, and you know, his dad says, "Hey, you should work here. You want to work? Start today." And I remember getting the vest, which I still have, my Multi-Video vest, and I worked at the video store. I would go to school and then go to the video store. This infuriated everybody else in the gang because they'd all been told no. And I was very calm and saying, look, I didn't go through John Jr. I went through John Sr., his dad, and got the job. So don't blame John, you know. And I was good at working at the video store because I know movies like nobody else. And John and I would work the counter, you know, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday nights, flinging videos. We would emulate Cocktail by flinging videos and tossing them around and helping customers find just the right movie they wanted. And it was a really good time working there. You know, I have a whole episode where I talk about my video career, slinging VHS tapes. But in the senior year, you know, it was a really good job to have. And this was later in the senior year, you know, later by by March or April, I was working at Multi-Video. And I would work there for almost like over a year, I think. But the school year marched on. You know, we got our grades, we got our classes. There was a thing called senior obligations, where if you wanted to graduate and walk the line with a cap and gown, and let me tell you, my mom was very adamant. Jeffrey, you're going to walk that line. You know, my brother didn't graduate, and we weren't too sure about my sister behind me. So I was the only one who was going to walk in a cap and gown, and my mother was going to make sure I did it. And here's the thing. I wasn't aware there was an option not to. I just assumed this is what life is. You're in school, so your job at this point is to get good grades and graduate. And again, I was totally okay with all of that. I had no problem walking the line and doing all that. It didn't seem like there was an option out. So senior obligations meant you went up to the office and you sat down with your counselor, and they went over what you owed. Were you missing any books at any time during your career at Norwalk High? Books, ASB things. I mean, it was very odd. And some kids would walk out of there owing like $200 or $300. And I remember, like, I went to my mom and I'm like, hey, I owe $30 or $40. And she's like, well, you got a job. I was like, yeah, I guess I got to pay for that. So you pay for it. You order your cap and gown. You know, and this is all done fairly early. You know, I ordered my senior class ring fairly early from Jostens. And my poor mom, you know, she was going to buy all this stuff because I was the big graduating kid, and I didn't know, like, hey Jeff, why don't you leave your mom alone and stop buying so much crud? So I had a ring with a diamond in it. I still have it, my Jostens ring. It has my JT symbol etched inside. Like, oh, give me a break. You know, I got my yearbook. Everybody's signing my yearbook. You know, Crazy Tuck. Hey, Crazy Tuck. Nice knowing ya. Mr. Crab wrote, hey, Tucker, you're weird. You know, see it in Star Wars or something. I don't know, right? And you start paying all this money, and suddenly it becomes real. You're going to graduate. Oh my God, we're going to graduate. So as graduation date neared, and all these classes start folding up, and it gets hotter at the school, and the doors are left open, and the teachers have run out of things to teach you. So they start just putting movies on, or you spend the class hour signing yearbooks. And suddenly, for that brief moment, as a senior in that world, it felt like a movie. Like, oh, this is what they try to get on the screen. This moment of being young and carefree. And yeah, sure, I got a job, but who cares? I'm in school. We're hanging out. These are people that I've known for 5 years or longer if they went to elementary. And in just a couple of weeks, I'm never going to see them again unless in passing. And that's so weird because you're packing up all these memories and all these people and all these events and the place. I mean, school becomes this place. And the school that we had dubbed Norwalk High, suddenly you don't want to leave because you're not going to get to come back here again. And then the bomb drops that the same day that we graduate and walk the line with our cap and gown and say goodbye is the same night they're showing Batman at midnight. So that became the focal point of our lives that day in June. And you get up early. You get down to the graduation was held at Excelsior. You go to Norwalk and they bust us all over. And there was all these rules, don't grandstand. It's before the internet, before social videos or anything like that. They're just like, hey, mind your business. And we all did. I mean, nobody was there to act like a goof. And I remember sitting there with Becky and Terry and John and Randy Villani and Kathy and all these people that I had grown up with. And now we're suddenly hours away from officially saying goodbye to this place and becoming adults in the world. Like, it's so surreal and weird. And then they started and people are speaking, the principal's talking. This is the same arena where I watched every football game because I was obsessed with cheerleaders. And then they start calling names and it's hot and I wish they'd finish. Nah, and they're playing Pomp and Circumstance. And then suddenly they're calling my name, and I'm walking up, and I'm getting my fake diploma because the real one will be given to me later. And I can hear my mother screaming in the audience. And then it all just sort of fades into the background. And then the floodgates open, and all the parents come out. And I have pictures from these moments. And for some reason, Don Berg showed up wearing my school colors, purple and gold, which are great in a yearbook and not so great on the human body, and certainly not on Don Berg's body. But that was it. And we mulled about in that on the grass there for a while, and then we'd already made the plan. And the plan was everybody was having a graduation party. So we started making the graduation journey, the festival dates, the tour of all the parties. So one by one, we're hitting all these parties, and we're collecting people as we go. So we went to my house, we went to John's house, a couple other places, and we all ended up late that night at the Gateway Theater in La Mirada, which doesn't even exist anymore, for the midnight showing of Batman. And I remember sitting there in the aisle of the theater, waiting for the lights to dim. And all my friends are here. And this is the end. This is going to be the end. Because we're going to watch this movie, we're going to go to Denny's, and we're going to scream about it and cheer about it and talk about it and make plans to see it again. But we're never going to be together like this, in this group, as a whole, ever again. Because everybody's going to get jobs. They're going to move away. John would end up joining the army himself after he married the girl that moved in across the way and had a kid who's now in his 20s, I think, or nearing 30. I don't know. But it was one of those weird moments of it all ends here. So it's every time I watch Batman, I can see that row of people and the soda cups and popcorn and the excitement and the sadness of high school coming to a close and the lights are dimming. And senior year was such a triumph of creativity for me and walking the line and, making my mom proud. And then leaving Norwalk High behind. We did have a lofty plan, Toby and I. We were going to pull the greatest senior prank of all time. We had procured a realty sign. We had a bag of cement, we had a jug of water, and a shovel. And we were going to put the realty sign in front of the school for the last day of senior year. So we got there at 3 a.m., all ready to go, and there was already a police car parked out front with a cop in it. So they knew we were up, we were going to try something. They thwarted us. We weren't about to get out of the car and do any shenanigans with the cops there. So that never really happened, and we had to get rid of that realty sign. But it all culminated in that screening of Batman. And by the next morning, you wake up, and there's that weird feeling of it's not really summer vacation anymore, is it? You're out forever. And do you work that day? Yeah, I probably did. You go to work and life just sort of starts moving on, and you start to see people less and you hear from them less. And I ended up working at the mall at Spencer Gifts, and every once in a while somebody would come in and I go, oh my God. And they go, oh my God. And then let's get together. And then you don't, and it was very surreal. I've said that quite a bit on this show, but the ending was very, sentimental, like the ending of The Wonder Years, or the ending of Stand By Me, where they're all sort of peeling off and you get the narration of, John married so-and-so and had a kid, and I never heard from so-and-so again, and it just it ended, and I had a great time senior year. I have no regrets. I'm excited. It's fun to talk about it in this sort of weird way that I'm doing. A big thanks to all the teachers at Norwalk, good and bad, who, the good ones teach you and the bad ones teach you in their own bad way. You learn what not to do. But I had a great time, and I hope you've enjoyed this weird journey through my high school career. I've been trying to do these episodes for a long time, so capping them off for me it's even bittersweet. There's a little bit of, hey, I'm done. What do I do now? And you move on to the next thing, just like leaving Norwalk behind. And I did go back for one reason or another. The next year I was back at Norwalk, and I was, walking the halls like, what am I doing here? This is weird. I got to get out of here. I have got to get out of here, and I've got to make a point not to come back, at least, years later. I've never been to a reunion. They called me in 99 for the 10 year, and I didn't want to go. This is my reunion right here. It's an audio reunion of all my memories and all my friends. And in the context of my stories, they're all perfect, and they're all frozen in time. Because people age and they change. And I've run into people who've confessed to not even know who I am, and that's fine. I'm not so big that I need everybody to know who I am or remember me. I'm okay with that. Because I have my memories. And we've just walked through them. This is Jeff Tucker. This is the show 91 Reasons. Thanks for listening and tuning in and going on this journey with me. If you're interested in my books, they're on Amazon.com. Search The Sixth Key. That's the first book of my series. It continues with The Lost Station, The Infinite Backward, The Ice Temple. I'm currently at work on book 5, which finishes the whole series. My other book is Your Friend in Time, How Back to the Future Changed My Life. And if you're at Knott's Berry Farm, take a look around. You might see me because I practically live there. Thanks for tuning into this episode of 91 Reasons.
Thanks for listening to 91 Reasons. Please subscribe and leave a review on iTunes. Find us on Facebook. Is anyone even still listening?